What if the invisible friend who kept you company during your loneliest childhood moments wasn't just imagination, but actually your mind's first attempt at self-therapy? What if that voice telling you everything would be okay was your psyche creating exactly what you needed to survive? You probably remember having an imaginary friend. Maybe they appeared when you moved to a new city, when your parents fought, or when you felt invisible at school. Then one day, they just disappeared. Most adults dismiss imaginary friends as simple childhood fantasy. But recent psychological research reveals something profound. Children who create imaginary companions often show higher emotional intelligence, better coping mechanisms, and stronger self-soothing abilities as adults. Here's what nobody tells you about that invisible companion, who knew exactly what to say when the world felt too big and scary. Your imaginary friend wasn't random. They were your developing mind's sophisticated defense mechanism against emotional overwhelm. Child. Psychologist Dr. Marjorie Taylor found that imaginary friends typically appear during periods of stress, transition, or emotional need. Your brain literally created a supportive presence because the real world wasn't providing one. Think about this. Your friend probably had qualities you desperately needed. Were they brave when you felt scared? Confident when you felt small? Understanding when nobody else seemed to get you? That wasn't coincidence. Your unconscious mind was already identifying what you lacked and creating internal resources to fill those gaps. Your imaginary friend was your first therapist, designed specifically by your psyche to help you navigate emotional challenges you couldn't handle alone. But here's where it gets heartbreaking. Most imaginary friends disappear around age 8 or 9, right when social pressure peaks and we learn that make-believe isn't acceptable. You likely stopped talking to your friend not because you outgrew them, but because the world taught you to be ashamed of needing invisible support. Notice what happened next. Without your internal companion, did you start seeking validation externally? Did you become people-pleasing, constantly anxious about what others thought? Many adults who struggle with self-worth and emotional regulation had rich imaginary friendships that were prematurely severed by social conditioning. We traded our internal support system for external approval, and many of us have been emotionally hungry ever since. Your imaginary friend served a crucial protective function that most people never recognize when faced with emotional pain. Children have limited options. They can internalize the hurt, act out, or create psychological buffers. Your imaginary friend was a sophisticated buffer. They helped you process emotions that were too big for your developing brain. They provided perspective when you felt trapped. They offered unconditional acceptance when the real world felt conditional and scary. But here's what's really remarkable. The qualities your friend possessed weren't random. They were precisely calibrated to your specific emotional needs. If you felt powerless, they were strong. If you felt unworthy, they celebrated you. If you felt confused, they had clarity. Your mind created exactly what you needed to survive emotionally intact. Fast forward to today. You're an adult dealing with anxiety, depression, or self-doubt. You might be in therapy, taking medication, or reading self-help books. But here's what you probably haven't considered. You once had an incredibly sophisticated internal support system that you abandoned. That voice that used to comfort you. You replaced it with social media validation, the companion who believed in you unconditionally. You traded them for relationships where you perform and pretend. Many mental health struggles in adulthood stem from this disconnection from our internal resources. We stopped trusting our ability to provide ourselves with comfort, guidance, and emotional support. When you lost your imaginary friend, something else moved into that psychological space, the inner critic. That harsh voice telling you you're not good enough. It's occupying the same mental territory where your supportive companion once lived. Your inner critic learned to speak louder than your inner friend ever did. Because criticism feels more realistic in a world that taught you unconditional support was childish fantasy. But here's the psychological truth. Both voices are constructions of your mind. The difference is, one was designed to protect and nurture you, while the other reflects the harsh judgments you internalized from a world that wasn't safe enough for your sensitive spirit. You have the power to choose which voice gets to speak. What if you could reconnect with that supportive internal presence? Not through childish fantasy, but through mature self-compassion and internal dialogue. Many therapeutic approaches essentially help you rebuild this relationship with your inner, supportive voice. Cognitive behavioral therapy teaches you to challenge harsh thoughts. Internal family systems helps you dialogue with different parts of yourself. Self-compassion practices reconnect you with that unconditionally loving internal presence. The goal isn't to have imaginary friends as an adult. It's to reclaim your ability to be your own source of comfort, wisdom, and emotional support. Your childhood friend wasn't separate from you. They were the wisest part of you, speaking up when you needed guidance most. Calling your imaginary friend a guardian angel isn't religious doctrine, it's psychological accuracy. They appeared exactly when you needed protection from emotional overwhelm. They provided guidance during confusion. They offered love when you felt unlovable. That's precisely what guardian angels are supposed to do. Whether you believe in actual angels or not, you undeniably had an internal presence designed to guard your emotional well-being and guide you through difficulties. The tragedy is that most of us dismiss this as just imagination instead of recognizing it as our psyche's incredible capacity for self-healing and protection. So how do you reconnect with this supportive internal presence as an adult? Start by paying attention to your internal dialogue. When you notice harsh self-criticism, pause and ask, what would my most compassionate friend say to me right now? This isn't about creating delusions or escaping reality. It's about accessing the wise, supportive part of yourself that you once trusted completely. Try this. When you're struggling, imagine your childhood friend sitting beside you. What would they say about your current situation? How would they comfort you? Their wisdom is still inside you. It's just been drowned out by years of harsh conditioning and the loud voices of an often uncompassionate world. Many therapists talk about reparenting yourself, learning to provide the emotional support you needed but didn't receive as a child. Your imaginary friend was your first attempt at reparenting. You instinctively created what you needed when the adults around you couldn't provide it. Reconnecting with this capacity isn't regression. It's reclaiming your natural ability to nurture and support yourself through difficult emotions. The same creativity and intuition that generated your childhood companion can help you develop a healthier relationship with yourself today. This is why therapy often involves learning to speak to yourself with kindness and developing internal resources for emotional regulation. Here's what's beautiful about this process. As you reconnect with your internal supportive voice, you begin healing not just current struggles, but the original wounds that made your imaginary friend necessary in the first place. You stop seeking from others what you can provide for yourself. You become less desperate for external validation because you're rebuilding internal validation. This doesn't mean isolation or self-reliance to an unhealthy degree. It means developing a secure internal foundation that allows for genuine connection rather than desperate attachment. When you can comfort yourself, you're free to love others without needing them to fix your emotional pain. The challenge isn't just reconnecting with your supportive inner voice, it's maintaining that connection in a world that constantly pulls you towards self-doubt and external validation. Every time you scroll social media, seeking approval, you're abandoning your internal friend for the crowd's opinion. Every time you harsh self-criticism goes unchallenged, you're letting your inner critic overpower your inner supporter. But here's the empowering truth. Just as you once created an imaginary friend effortlessly, you can rebuild this supportive internal relationship with intention and practice. It's not about going backward to childhood fantasy. It's about moving forward with the emotional wisdom you once possessed naturally. Rebuilding this relationship starts with small daily practices. When you make a mistake, instead of immediately criticizing yourself, pause and ask, how would I comfort a good friend going through this? When you're scared about the future, instead of spiraling into anxiety, check in. What would my wisest, most loving internal voice say about this fear? When you feel alone or misunderstood, remember, the part of you that created your childhood friend still exists. They knew how to provide exactly what you needed then, and that wisdom hasn't disappeared. It's just been buried under years of learning to mistrust your own emotional instincts. As you rebuild this internal, supportive relationship, something beautiful happens in your external relationships too. You stop putting impossible pressure on friends and partners to be everything you need emotionally. You become more generous because you're not constantly emotionally hungry. You offer others the same unconditional support you're learning to give yourself. This is how healing happens, not through finding the perfect external circumstances, but through rebuilding the internal resources that make you resilient, regardless of what's happening around you. Your childhood friend was preparing you for exactly this kind of emotional independence and inner strength. So was your imaginary friend really a guardian angel? Maybe. Or maybe your developing psyche was so wise that it created exactly what you needed to survive emotionally challenging circumstances. Either way, that supportive presence wasn't fantasy. It was your mind's natural capacity for self-healing and emotional resilience. The same creativity, wisdom, and love that generated your childhood companion lives inside you today. You just need to remember how to access it. You don't need to wait for someone else to provide the understanding, comfort, and guidance you seek. You once created it effortlessly, and you can learn to access it again. Your imaginary friend never really left. They just transformed into your capacity for self-compassion, internal wisdom, and emotional resilience. The next time you're struggling, try talking to yourself the way your childhood friend would have talked to you. That supportive voice you trusted so completely as a child. They're still there, waiting for you to remember that you deserve to be loved, especially by yourself. If this resonated with you, take a moment to reconnect with that part of yourself. Today, your inner child and your future self will thank you.